Yeah, sorry about that. So let us start. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well this morning. And it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to the first module of the grant writing program, training program that has been designed by IRD and Bondinnov within the ACE Partner Program. This training is specifically dedicated to colleagues partnering with African Centers of Excellence in West Africa. And today I will present you the definition of the appropriate response method. So this training program has been designed with the technical support from Bondinnov, who are partners in downtown Paris. My name is Gregory Giraud. I'm the ACE Partner Program Manager. I'm based in Marseille in France. And I am here with Mamadou Diallo, and we are hoping to provide you with the right expertise, tools, and methods to assist you in your grant writing endeavors. And just as an introduction, digital benevolence rule, please turn off your microphone and camera, but I think it's already the case. Within the Zoom's webinar, please use the chat to ask questions and feel free to react using emoticons. We are a pretty large group, so please use the chat and we will answer the questions at the end of this first training session that will last about 90 minutes. And I hope we have time at the end of the sessions for questions. So like I was saying, this training program is composed of 8 modules. So the idea is to provide you with a general understanding on how funding application works and to provide with you with practical methods to analyze the different calls, see if this call is for you. Is it maybe for some of your partners? Can you be a leader? Can you be part of a consortium? This is an 8-step process. So this is module 1, not 2. I changed things up a little bit since I will be talking about the definition of the appropriate response method. And right after that, I will share with you a general mapping of donors for calls for projects in West Africa. So the following training will be a little bit more technical. This first one will be broad and general understanding on what you need to do to identify and get ready to apply for a grant. And then we will be a little bit more details in the following modules. So our contents, we're going to start with the strategic implementation of your of the way you're going to go about identifying the right call and going and getting ready for it. We're going to talk a lot about eligibility. Is it for you? What kind of expenses? What kind of financing the grant can cover? For example, equipment, human resource, and then we're going to finish by the typology of the different donors. And very important is to understand what the donor wants in order for you to adapt the way you are going to write your grant accordingly. Of course, we can also talk about the technical constraints, the purchasing procedure, and the applicable law. Methodological elements of response, we're going to provide with a 10-step checklist to go about your writing program. What are the different evaluation criteria? Is it involving internal or external human resources? What are the technical constraints, the contextual elements? How you define your project accordingly? How you go about your budget? And we are going to conclude. So let's start with strategic implementation. Our first recommendation will be for you to gather as many tools as you can. Ideally, the earliest you will identify a call, the more opportunity you will create for yourself. So the idea is to identify backers that are likely to have covered by their expertise. So make sure you have a list of donors that is updated, qualified, and that you can monitor as you go about your different experience as a researcher or as an expert in grant writing. For example, we will present to you the listing that we are currently putting together for the ACE Partner program that I will present to you at the end of this program. And this kind of listing, you need to make sure you adapt it as you go. Another important aspect is to understand that you have two different and yet complementary methods to go about grant writing. The first one is the pull method, meaning that you are going to respond to a call. And the other one is the push approach, meaning that you are going to directly approach a donor and show him how great you are, and hopefully he or she will adapt their calls, or maybe not even go through a call at all, to fund you. That's what we call the push approach. So the pull approach, you get listed with relevant backers, donors, you set up watch on relevant call for projects. Le diapo ne passe pas. Stop right here. Thank you.
Gregory, the slides are not changing.
Okay, sorry about that. Do you see my screen now? Can you see it now, Mamadou?
Yes, you can go with full screen.
Are you on slide A, strategic implementation?
Wow. We were still at the first slide.
Oh, you were still at the first slide. Okay, sorry about that.
Yes.
So this is the main method that we want to share is this slide. You can see it all right? The strategic implementation slide. Mamadou? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, so let me just continue. So once again, you have two different approaches, the pull approach and the push approach. So the idea with the pull approach is to get a list of relevant donors that you can have and set up a listing that you can update as you go. The goals is to improve your qualification and maximize the chance of being directly solicited for relevant call. And the push approach is to contact donors directly through your networking and your lobbying actions. And the goal is to promote yourself and your organization and the value proposition that you can provide to the donors. You can learn about projects, you can be aware of business opportunities well in advance, rather than when the call is already open and posted on social media. So the key is to identify which approaches to adopt early on to secure success and limit risk. So make sure you rely on experts when it's possible, especially for complex projects. Call on internal support or support from close partners. Of course, the ACE Partner program is there for that. You can also contact your Europe team, support units, at your lab and universities. You can also use the service of consultants or specialists. Be careful because this is often very expensive. It's fixed or variable according to the different calls, but it can also help you secure higher success rate. So for some donors, it's very complex to respond to the call. So make sure you have the time, the legal support, and do not underestimate the word quantity that is attached to responding to big calls. And it is sometimes a risk. If you underevaluate the time or the effort it takes to respond to a call, it might actually become one of your biggest risks. This is a true story. We one day responded to a call from the European Union. The call was actually cancelled due to the lack of available cash and cash flow, especially if you are responding with the private sector, can be an issue. Sometimes it can take up to 8 months to prepare a program, especially if you have a lot of partners, and sometimes if you don't have the proper consortium within the program, it can actually backfire right before the end of your submission, and that will mean that you will have lost a lot of time and efforts. Sometimes also you have to be prepared for audits for the call, control of the program, control of the services, and you might need to reimburse the money that was spent that was not following the proper regulation, and that can be a huge financial toll on your organization. So now we're going to take a look at the different type of eligible expenses, financing, and the first recommendation is to filter. So you have different eligibility requirements. So let's look at the vocabulary here. If you have a call for project that can be open, restricted by mutual agreement, it may be preceded by other call notices. You can go through different processes. You have the pre-information notice telling you that the call will be announced. You have the expression of interest saying that the call is actually open, but we want to identify who will be interested in it. The invitation to bid. This is a formal tender of notice that will require a clear understanding of what you want to do and what you can bring as an institution and as an expert to the identified call. And the last one is a request for proposal. That will be the detailed offer that you will be providing. So detailed research or innovation approach, detailed budget, detailed timeline. This will take you the longest. So to study if you are eligible or not, there are many things to look at. The first one will be the geographical area.
Gregory, excuse-moi, les diapos ne bougent pas.
Okay, thank you, Mamadou. This is actually annoying. Oh no, let me try something else. Do you see it now?
Yes.
You see if, like, do you see it now again? Do you see the next one? Mamadou?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's maybe the speaker this one.
Can you make the full screen?
Yeah. Okay, can you see it now? Full screen?
No, it's not on full screen.
How about now? Do you see it full screen now?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see the slide going through? Are the slides changing? Mamadou? Are the
Sorry.
slides?
Yes, they're
They're
changing,
changing.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, the first question to ask you is that, is it in your geographical area? So is this call based in the country? Is it designed to go address regional issues? Is it for cities? Is it for countryside? So the first real question to ask you is it within your geographical area? Identify the language, the context, the deadlines that are expected of you. And to ensure the first level of eligibility, check whether this is eligible for structure. Is a person okay to apply? What are the technical capacities that are requested? Is it in-house expertise? Can you mobilize external experts? What are the human capacities? Is it designed to fund a team or a consortium? Again, external partners. What are the financial capacities? Is the budget indicated, and how much time is it going to take? And this is very often a pretty tricky question, because your call is going to depend on how much money you have, but very often you need to be cost effective. And if you do not have a general idea of how much money you're going to get, this might actually be a challenge. Can you see the next slide, Mamadou?
Yes.
Thank you. So what are the respondent profiles? Can companies apply, NGOs, research, public institution, consultants? In order to get it right, you need to look at the different criteria in terms of status, governance, size, maturity, profitability, geography. So we will give you an example, the ARISE program that we responded to last year. This was a specific call for African Research Initiative for Scientific Excellence. The eligibility was for African researchers at the beginning of their career, and this will be detailed in one of our modules that we will look together at how we can check those criteria and is it for you or is it not. Another example from the African Development Bank was the Gender Equality Trust Fund. And you will see that it will be any structure supporting women's entrepreneurship. So is it you? Is it not you? That's a question you need to ask yourself before you start writing. Another example in different types of criteria. If you are research, international cooperation, strengthening of actors, if it's more of a sector structuring approach, the African Development Bank will fund renewable energy in Kenya. So you will need to have a country-based approach. Springbrook Prize for bilateral cooperation in research, Africa and France. Make sure you have collaboration between your lab and a French lab. Those are examples. Other question you need to ask yourself is, in terms of technical and administrative files, what kind of reporting will you need to provide? What kind of activity report will you need to provide? Will you need to write articles? Will you need to get reference at the end of your process? What are the type of expenses that the call will cover? Will it be running costs? Will it be investment? Will it be HR? For example, if you want to buy equipment, will you have to go through procurement processes, so on and so forth. Another examples, if you are funded by the Europe, a French Development Agency or World Bank, these very often are loans, national loans, and that means you cannot use it for operating purposes. And sometimes you will have to create separate bank accounts for your program. So at the end of that initial look, that's actually pretty simple. Do you go or you do not go? Should I stay or should I go? And that's a very important question to ask yourself. If you go because calls are going to be extremely competitive. Make sure you have the right understanding of the call, identify what the donor wants. And if you do not go, it's okay, don't. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Other calls are going to be open, they are going to be more for you. So if you don't go, it's not a big deal. If you go full throttle. So moving up, let's have a look at the different types of donors and some strategies and reflexes you can have before the project. So the recommendation number 3 will be the characterization of the demand. Behind each and every calls, you will have an agenda. The donor will usually not just fund for the sake of funding. They will want something in return. So the idea is to identify what the donor wants. So when you are identifying the different types of backers, the different type of donors, once again, you have different types of methods. You have the push and you have the pull. The objective is the same, is to identify what the donor wants. So the push method is when you are responding to a call. It's very important to visit the website, identify, and hopefully find the donor's strategic framework that will provide you with a perfect understanding of its needs and its constraints. The other method is the pull method, is to actually go and meet the donors and to have face-to-face interaction with them to identify what they want. And it's very important. So for example, in your donor characterization process, you will need to understand whether it's a local or international donor. Is it public or private? Is it a research-based approach or more of a socio-economic approach? And this will actually define the way you go about it. In order to decode the request, you need to understand the logic, the priorities, and the constraints. We will call that the personae method. This method is widely used in Agile. It uses different tools to identify if you are giving life. I mean, the idea is to give life to the partner. So, for example, the one who will actually assess and judge your response. What do they want? So let's give you an example. This is a colleague from, she's a program manager for the African Development Bank. Her name is Anna, she's 35 years old. Angel, I'm sorry, she's 35 years old. She works in Abidjan. She has a master's in international project management. And it's very important to know her a little bit to know what she wants. So if you do some research, you know that she worked in an impact NGO in Senegal and Mali in the field of capacity building for human health. She worked then for AFD for 5 years, and she worked on digital youth education programs. And she joined the African Development Bank 8 months ago. Her goal is to help the development of Africa. A personal driving force is to feel useful to the actors, to the field for development in the logic of sustainable construction. And she recently followed the training on logical framework. So a different constraint as a funder will be the funding. She has an envelope of 2 million euros per year, and she wants to fund digital projects in West Africa to boost the capacity of young people in the subject, in possible connection with school and universities, and continuing education. Her main objective is employability. She's looking for impact, especially on students, with measurement of impact, so monitoring of technical procedures, and our program is co-funded by the World Bank, and she has a very structured reporting and an online platform that has just been launched. So this is a very good example of people you might meet in the developing world, and it's very important to understand them, to know what they want, and our understanding right there with that Angel will be convinced by project. We have promoters, we have references in their field with sustainable values and impact, and with economic models to identify too. It's a bank, they want impact on the social economic sectors. Let us give you another example. This is George. He works for a company. The Aegis Group is based in New York. He went to the university and he joined the group after a period in a startup incubator as part of the voluntary commitment to the World Bank. His goal is social business as a model for sustainable development, and his constraint is that the group's team do not like CSR as cost center. They always have to convince internally as a few support points and financial means. His visibility, he has great visibility issues. The approach must contribute to a positive brand image to the group. And he has deep conviction and he really wants to work for a more sustainable future with rippling effect for real change. So George can provide one-time funding for events like a symposium, stakeholder event in the framework of the sustainable development goals. He needs a lot of media coverage and he wants visibility for his brand. So it's a whole different approach and you need to understand that and put that in your call. Let us give you some technical, in terms of typology of donors, I'm sorry. You need to understand their technical constraints, the way they are going to go about purchasing and what is the applicable law. Very often the applicable law is the one of the donor. So in terms of procurement, international and national law is applicable and procedures are becoming more and more important. The results are sometimes complex to put together and for you to manage in some cases. So for example, the purchasing procedures can be specific to each organization that you will have to adapt. They will have different charters on social commitment applicable to the national legislation and depending on the backers. You will also have different approaching depending on which type of data you will be collecting. And once again, you will need to check the applicable law and also you will have ethical commitments and make sure you have supporting the documents and proof of achievements. Next step is the methodological element of response. Recommendation number 3 is to get organized. So after removing the uncertainty of eligibility, the question you will ask yourself is, do I have the time to prepare my response in the time available, according to the required criteria? I mentioned that before, but time is going to be your enemy. So make sure you have as much of it as possible to go and give you the right time at each step of the process. So this is a tool that we are sharing with you today, is the writer's checklist. And if you are able to go through those 10 steps, you will put the envelope on the side. So number 1 is list what you need to be in the producing form. So make sure you know by heart the selection and the evaluation criteria, including the administrative document to be provided. Number 2 is gather the internal human resource to do. So CVs, proven experience. And if you don't have them, go and find them. Number 3 is imagine the global framework of the technical note in the identified specific assets and differentiations. Number 4 is list the elements of context of knowledge to be gathered to support the answer. Gather them or look for them. Number 5 is detail the general and specific actions that are expected. Number 6 is set up the global budget and then refine it. Number 7 is set up the global agenda. Once again, identify it and then make it as precise as you can. Number 8 is define the impact, the sustainability and the governance of the project. Number 9 is to finalize the administrative file with the required documents. And number 10 is specify the procedures to be put in place and measure and monitor the results. Extremely important. So in terms of methodological approach also is really identify the response form and the selection evaluation criteria. And as a prerequisite, list the required elements, whether they are technical or administrative. Read the evaluation method and criteria. This is extremely important. This is an example of evaluation criteria. Each proposal received will be evaluated based on the following consideration. So, for example, the validity of the proposed project, the offer and background of the candidate in relation to the program, the leverage of additional funding sources, the applicant's ability to scale up, expand the scope of the project, and the expected scope and impact of the total project. So the different ratio may vary, but in general, this will be that. So you need to make sure you understand the frame of evaluation to adopt the right strategy. In terms of human resource, you will have internal and external resource. What we will advise you to do is to get the expertise and skills to be brought together to set up and implement the offer. Check the international capacity and availability. Is it sufficient? Verify the maximum amount allocated and check if all the required expertise versus resource are budgetary tenable. This will mean you will need to arbitrate the level of seniority and the number of people to be mobilized. The more people you have, of course, it will be, the more expensive it will be. So depending on the budget available and the need of the project, there are several options. We will cover that more in depth in module 5. So option number 1 will be the solo response. You will need to define an internal team leader identify and empower international contributors, share the writing schedule, identify, appoint project team. The CVs will be presented and the expertise and capacities related to the program as well. Option number 2, you can mobilize external partners. Once again, you will need to make sure you have an internal team leader, but that will also share that with the external partners. You will identify and empower internal and external contributors, share the writing schedule, and identify the project team. And option number 3 is a consortium that is specifically dedicated to large call with big fundings. The idea will be to choose a leader, define who is doing what within the team, identify the different contributors, and share the writing schedule, and once again, the project team. So these are some examples of how you can delegate the different activities between experts and partners. Identify the expertise domain. You will have 1 partner, 2 partners, maybe 3, and you will need to know who is doing what. So you can have partners working on specific domains. For example, here in this example, you will have partner 1 working on extensive and demonstrated knowledge of the Anglophone and Francophone African innovation ecosystem and the utilities sector on the continent. But you can also have items within which you will have a partner that is the lead, but will mobilize expertise from other partners. That will be the type of charts that you will need to design if you have more than 1 partner. Another example of task distribution chart between actors and donors. This will be a breakdown of tasks and distribution of time. Of course, we will share the slides that you can use this type of examples. This will be, for example, the bottom chart is in terms of different tasks over the timeline. Is it completed? Is it in progress? Is it overdue? This will be a good tool that you can use within the program. And of course, very important for each task is to define its added value, an element of differentiation. Review the overall objective and expected results, review the evaluation criteria, list the strengths, and imagine the overall framework for response. In terms of added value, what is very important to identify is the element of differentiation. For example, you will have different programs that you will have run. When you are showing what you can do, make sure you can put forward what you can do and what can be done in a wide range of different approaches. For example, is it an original idea? Is it a particular lab, equipment? Make sure that you show that it's that one will add to the other in a unique expertise type way. This is a listing of what's been done, for example, and once again, show that you are able to do many things in a complementary approach. In terms of context, it's very important that you understand the context and that you put forward your expertise in this matter. So review the first pages of the call for tenders, context, findings, objectives, and review the main points and support it with additional data. If you do that, make sure you plan additional documentary research in order to make sure you understand what is expected from the call. Define your project and the actions to be implemented, deepen the framework of the program, what are the global objectives, the general action, and to decline it with specific action. For example, you can put forward your assets, fill in the frames, all the proposed actions, work packages in response to each expected objective. Check again, if necessary, the list of required objectives and evaluation criteria to make sure your different action plans or work packages responds to what is required. So that's an example. The way you are going to put your different objectives can be put in the following format. You can have a reminder of the different project objectives set by the donor, and you can describe how you are going to go about each of the objectives. So for the general objective, you can have sub-objectives that are described by specific actions to be implemented, means to be used, duration of the action, description of each step. So you can have task 2.1, 2.2, 2.2.1. You can be as specific as possible. When you are defining the project budget, check the maximum budget allocated, what are the eligible expenses, and you can check any additional budgetary constraints, what are the per diem limits, capital expenditure limit, are you submitted to taxing? You can also check the code for each actions. It's very important here to make sure that the different actions are balanced in terms of budget, and you can also check the possible cash flow constraints. How much money are they going to put up front? How much money can they give you through the processing, and make sure you don't run out of cash during the project. This will be described in depth in module 6, but when you are defining the project, usually you divide it into the running cost, what we call the functioning program, in terms of human resource, travels, equipment, and you can also put the different investments that you can put. Make sure you have the total. I'm sorry, the example here is in French, but we will translate it. And some projects include or impose co-financing. Make sure you put it if you do. And some donors accept the value of technical and human contribution. It's also called in-kind contribution. Make sure you show it. And some projects require cash injection, and some do not. So make sure you put it and you describe it accordingly. When you are defining the agenda, the timeline, verify the project schedule, and when you are supposed to deliver the different objectives, check the availability of staff and partners, and evaluate the schedule for each single action. Very important. Once again, this is an example of an agenda by month, action 1 to 7, and that will help you clarify the timetable. It's an asset for the understanding of the offer, and will be an essential tool for the implementation of the program if selected. The timetable can be usefully broken down by action and staff, and this can also be a good strategic tool to use all along your program. Also, it's very important to define the social, economic, and environmental impact of the program. We like to use the SDG framework because you have some specific objectives and targets. And to us, the prerequisite here is to review the objectives of the call, sometimes in quantitative and qualitative terms, evaluate the direct and indirect impact of the project for each sub-objective and action, imagine the means of measuring and verifying the results, and also use it to compare the expected impact. We like to use SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, because it's pretty straightforward, and it's also interesting to have the links between SDGs, for example, environment and health, or education and energy, for example. So we strongly encourage you to do that. It's also very important to understand the issues and what they are expecting in terms of sustainability within the program. Make sure you show good governance. It's collective arbitration or strategic orientation bodies that can underline what's really asked from the proposal. So this is an example of the social, economic, and environmental impact a project can have. So the logical framework is one of the tools that have become essential in measuring impact. So as you can see, the matrix will show the overall objective, the specific objective, and the outputs, and it puts it in a logical frame in terms of intervention, indicators, what is the baseline, what is the current value, what the targets are, what the source and means of verification, and what are the different assumptions. So that's something you can, we strongly encourage you to use this type of matrix to define your approach, and we will talk about it in greater depth on module 8. In terms of administrative and technical files that you can provide, it is usually one of the last things on your checklist, and it should be put together at the beginning of the project because it can be time-consuming or simply very long to put together. Sometimes you have to reach out to your administrative colleagues, and sometimes they will have something that is already done, sometimes not, and it can take a long time. So make sure you leave the administrative document that can be provided, delegate it to the administrative staff, giving them sufficient time to gather all the documents, and make sure you gather the right signatures from the right people. And once again, this can take a long time, so make sure you are prepared. This is an example of administrative technical file. It's a list of documents that are more or less exhaustive, depending on the size of the project and the nature of the donors. Some documents can be obtained, can be long to obtain. The official signature to validate the request are often necessary. And lastly, the measurement and monitoring of results and indicators. It's very important. If your project is selected, it will be necessary to monitor and measure the budgetary elements and timetable of the realization, actions, and the different indicators. So make sure you put it in place from the beginning of the project. An easy way to collect, record, and classify data. That's something that will need to be put in the project procedure manual. And you will also need to make sure that you have audits and some kind of financial or qualitative evaluation study that can be conducted. That can will also be expected and funded by the donor. So these are some examples of follow-up matrix what are the different data that you will need to gather, archive, and use to put together your indicator. What are the justification of achievement by deliverable photos, timesheets, attendance sheets as well. Expense tracking is very important. What kind of budget is paid, what kind of committed, expected, or realized. And this will be covered in more depth in module 8. So to conclude, make sure you have a global approach. To us, you will have 3 files that you need to set up. The first one will be technical. The goal will be to present your approach, and you will use it to carry out your work. You will, the content will be to understanding the issues and the needs, intervention methodology, what work to be done, expect deliverables, what will be the team that is mobilized, the schedule, and the workload. Usually we count the workload in days, but it can be measured in different manners. You will also need a financial offer. The goal is to submit a proportionate, competitive, and feasible budget that will reach the project objectives. You will have a budget for the service by phase, by cost. You will have possible co-financing and make sure you have the right cash flow. You will, point of attention here, you will have the news tables. Make sure you have the right currencies, the taxes, and don't wait until the end of the technical offer to start putting together your financial offer. And lastly, you will need an administrative file. The goal is to meet administrative requirements, show your donor that you have the right administrative capacities to respond and carry the program and reach the objectives. The content may vary, but you will usually meet and find that donors usually all want the same thing. And this is time consuming, and our advice here will be to make a checklist of the documents to produce. And you can also archive those documents to produce, because like I said, sometimes the calls will be a bit similar in a way that all the donors will be expecting kind of the same way. So if there are something that you might reuse from one call to another. So this will be a matrix that we will advise you to follow to stage the different offer after verification and eligibility and response time. So the different steps, you have the launch, you have the framing, you have the drafting and follow-up, proofreading and sending. So each steps will have different goals. So for example, when you are launching yourself, the idea is to be structured, to analyze the demand, the need, the profile of the donors, and framing of the response, the deciphering of the expectation. When you do it, when you are asked yourself the right question and you have decided to go, who does it is the team leader. For the framing, the idea is to crack the case. You have to understand the context of the call, framing belief, anticipate non-standard response elements, targeting expert CVs, mobilize support teams. It takes usually 1 or 2 days. It's done by the team leader and the response team and experts and those people who are knowledgeable. When you're drafting and following up on the response, its objective is to steer the response, structure it, define and assign tasks, write the call, the action, design the overall budget, the schedule, monitor progress, refine and adjust. You do it according to the deadlines. The more time you have, the better. and the team leader and responses team are in charge. And proofreading and sending is very important. The goal is to test it before you submit the final offer. You will be conducting a blind reading with fresh eyes, verify budgets, documents. You usually send it online or by mail, and make sure you keep a proof of deposits. Our advice here is do not wait for the last minute to do it, because it happened to us many times. You will wait for the last minute and you will have I don't know, technical issue, you have no internet, power cut or something. So we will advise you to do it at least 3 days in advance, and it will be done. The proofreading, make sure you have a third party. The better the proofreading is, the better it is. And the team leader and the response team will be in charge of submitting. That's about it. So writing a tender requires creativity, concentration, and organization. The writer will build this offer and sequences that will be regularly reused and refined with regular back and forth. We like to take the metaphor of a sculpture wants to start with shapeless material, but in the end, we are hoping it will become a beautiful statue. So if you follow the steps accordingly, that will provide you with the right tools. You can make mistakes. The idea and the objective is to learn from them. And the most grants you are going to write, the better you will become at it. And hopefully the more money you will get. One last piece of advice, we mentioned that quickly before, archive the grants you have succeededly or unfortunately failed at submitting, because they were works that you can reuse, whether you are or not awarded. The documents you have produced can create some kind of library of documents that can be providing you technical expertise in the long run. This may seem obvious, but it can save you time. And organizing your response is even more important when you work with several people. So create a subfolders and share it with your colleague. And we will take questions. Mamadou, I don't know if we have any.
Sorry?
Do we have any questions, Mamadou?
I was answering to the question at the same time.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so we just had technical issues like the slides were not moving, and then are the slides available after the training session? I said yes, and no more other questions.
Okay, so maybe we can, yeah, we have some people raising their hands. Let me. So we have Olabode Esan. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Gregory. We appreciate your effort so far. Yes, to buttress what Momo said, the slide at the points was missing. I've been back at the point how to join it from 16 again. So we like the presentation to be available for us. And so far, so good. The presentation was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, apologies again. We will, of course, share all the slides with you. And the recording will be on our YouTube channel, and we will share all the information at the end of the week. Any other questions, comments? Okay, then maybe we can move on. So, like I was mentioning, we started by the framework that is hopefully clear amongst us, whether we start responding or we start or we keep looking. And so for the second step of the presentation, I will share a mapping that we have been doing. Let me share my screen here within the ACE partner program. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Not yet, go ahead. Yes,
Can you see it? Thank you.
yeah, okay.
So this is a matrix that we are currently doing within the ACE partner program. That is pretty straightforward, actually. We have decided to identify as many donors as we can. This is not an extensive listing, but we will share that with you, of course. And the idea is to get a sense of where we need to be looking for tenders. Of course, now with social media, you will have access to a few of them. But once again, when you are adopting the dual method of push and pull, you need to pre-identify which donors are for you. So designing this type of matrix will not only help you identify the different calls, but also give you an idea what's required in order to respond. So I will give you an example real quick right now. We have, for example, the World Bank. We have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have the Swiss, the German, the Danish, the British public development agencies. You have the European call, you have NIH. And for example, if you click on the World Bank, you will go on their website. And if you go to their website, you will see that. Give me a minute here. You will see that you have, for example, you will get to this website that will require you to have, can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it will take you to the World Bank like official call for tender sites. And the minute you log in, what's very important is to identify exactly what's going to be required. So, for example, you see that you will be asked to sign in. And what does that mean? It means that you will require to have an account to respond to the call. And that means that you will have different type of accounts. It means you can have a personal account. It means it can mean also that you have a institutional account. And once again, like you can see the World Bank site. And originally, we're gonna have a lot of information on the donor. You will have who we are, what we do, where we work, understanding poverty, and work with us. And what's very important to understand here is that in order to log in, create your account, respond to a call, the World Bank is actually asking you to go through these different sites. You need to understand who they are, what they do, where they work, understand poverty, and in order to work with us. So I'm going to sign here. I have an account. No, I'm going to sign to show you as an example what you do. So you see, oh, that's easy. So this will list all the business opportunity opened by the World Bank right here. So this is actually means that they will probably come out with a new tool. And you see, you have all the different items right there. You will see. So you have a selection number, you have a title, what kind of selection type. You see, most of them are firms, meaning that you cannot apply as an individual consultant. You have the publication date. You have the expression of interest deadline and the language of notice. So as we saw earlier, this will give you extremely valuable information, whether you go or you do not go. So let's take an example here. You have enterprise survey in Chad, so you click on it. You will have a enterprise survey in Chad, Côte d'Ivoire, Gambia, Rwanda, and Togo, publication 26th of October, assignment country, funding source, bank budget, constitutional source, and you have the different objective, and you will have the description. 1 to 2 pages in length, and the word entity. Tac. The expected sample size is 360 completed interviews in Chad, 600 in Côte d'Ivoire, 150 in Gambia, Rwanda, in Togo. What is the funding source? And you will have all the required information. So you will see, you will have CVs. You will have to show an expression of interest in English through the platform, and you will have the different eligibility criteria. So what do you see here? You see that they are looking for experts to conduct surveys through different companies in various countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's it. They don't put a timeline. They do not put how much money you can use, and that will be up to you to decide. So as you can see, this can be tricky, but it's going to be up to you to respond or not to. Let me give you another example here from the listing we have. Which one do we have? We have, for example, let's check out Bill and Melinda Gates. Up. You have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Up. You will have the website, they have grant opportunity. So you see the site, you go to the grant opportunities website, and you have different programs, so the solution learning implementation grants. Like you have the global HPV burden study, multi-site epidemiology amongst girl women in this region. What else you have? You have the 2022 Amalama Excellence for public, you see, diversity, equity. So let's take an example. Let's take supporting up. So the money. supporting coordinated, effective gender equality advocacy in Europe. So why Europe, I don't know, but you can see the rationale. This is that. Advocate more or better funding. And you have the key. You have C, submission deadline is 18th of November. The finalists will be notified in January. And you will have to start in March 2023. The criteria is time and space, additional preferred and way to be given to. And you will have the review of proposal, not exactly what's asked for. So these are exactly what we've been talking about. Once again, I'm sure we will share the different listing, and the idea is for you to go about your day and make sure you have this type of chart and matrices just for yourself. Do we have any questions? We had a question from Mr. Ovozunku.
Yes, we have some questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let me come with the first one. Can we merge a schedule of activities and time frame on the same table during the grant writing?
You can, but I will strongly advise you to, yes, of course you can, but it really depends on your framework. If it's readable, if it's doable, it can be done. The problem you're gonna have with that is time and money are not the same thing. So you need to make sure that within your budget, you will describe as many items as you can, and in your timeline, you will describe as many times as you can. So if it's readable, if it's doable, yes, you can put everything on one document, but I would strongly advise you to also have one very clear, one very readable budget, and one clear, very readable agenda.
Thank you for the question. So I answered some other questions, but I would like to let you answer this one. Kindly show donors for natural languages processing. And please, are we going to be given the record session after class? I said yes. Yeah, so can the result be filtered so that only openings for individual will be shown? This is our first question.
No.
Can the result be filtered so that only openings for individuals will be shown?
So you can, that's actually up to you. You need to go about finding the right donors. You need to go to the right website. You need to do your own monitoring charts. It means that you really need to know who in your socio-economic sector, who in your research thematics is funding what, and you need to go check their website. If they have a platform like the one from the World Bank, of course, you can do a filter. As a quick word, it will be extremely difficult for you to respond to large calls for tender as an individual. Usually, those are designed towards institutions, but those institutions can also require individual expertise. And that's why you can be financed as an individual. So as the same way you are doing this mapping of the different donors, you also need to do the mapping of those key institutions that are responding to those different calls and that will be requiring individual assistance. Like we mentioned, when those institutions are going to respond for calls, they will be needing CVs, they will be needing expertise. So make sure they have yours, is my advice if you are looking for individual contracts. Other questions?
The last question is kindly shows donors for natural language processing.
The what, I'm sorry? Can you repeat the question, Mamadou?
Oluhumi Aliyu, can you precise your question? What do you mean by show? Do you want us to show, or what do you mean?
Maybe you can use the chat, maybe. Maybe you have another question.
Sorry, I don't have other questions. Just one request, please, can we have the material and the recording after the exercise? This is, I said yes. And I just asked Aliu to precise his question. So we don't have more questions.
Okay, so yeah, you will have the other materials on the recording. And also if you complete a short question form at the end of the training, you will be receiving a certificate of participation. And that will be Mamadou in charge. And so we will send everything to those who have been connected to the different sessions. We have the information through Zoom. Any other questions, comments? No, then that concludes our first and second module. The next one is at what time, Mamadou?
Sorry?
The next module is at what time?
2 p.m.
Yeah. Gaoussou,
It's at
is
2.
Gaoussou, are you here?
Yes,
2
Gaoussou is
p.m.
here. So it's
So the next module is by Mamadou, and it's about the module, the third module. Faisal said he was taking one, but I don't know which one.
yeah. So it's at 2 p.m.
Yes.
Senegal time or
UTC, GMT, so universal
okay.
time.
Okay. Well, we hope to see you then. And you have a good day.
Thank you.
So, Gregory, see you at 2 p.m. UTC.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.